Well, hello, my friend. How are you
Hello.
today?
Good. How are you? It's great to be
Oh,
here.
it's so wonderful to be with you in this space. Every time we speak, even when I think of you, I get messages. So I don't know if that's you sending me those messages or if it's our connection. And as I uh, think about you, and certainly when we talk, there's always messages that come through. And so I'm excited for us to record this today and allow other listeners into what I consider the magic of that, of hearing others converse and speak and gaining messages and wisdom from that, not because we're so wise and not because we're so like all that, but because I believe we're messengers, and in that flow and that conversation, other people pick up messages. And that is true of all beings, right? That all beings are that. And allowing yourself to tune into that is just such a magical way of living. So I'm so excited about today and our discussion. Uh, One of the things I guess I want to start with for listeners, since I know you, but listeners may not know you, just a little background on you, whatever you want to share.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you for having me here. It's an honor to be in this space and sharing and connecting with all of you who are listening. I believe we're all reflections of each other. So, by you tuning into this podcast, you're tuning into a reflection, and I hope that there are things here for you to receive. And so, a little bit about me. I'd like to call myself an explorer of reality, a discoverer. I'm here continually discovering. I've walked in many worlds in this life. I've been in the fashion world, I've been in the entertainment world, and then I really dived deep onto my spiritual journey and my connection journey, which led me to living in the jungle and learning from different indigenous people and Mayan people, to traveling the world and learning from many healers and teachers and continuing on my own path. So, you know, I don't necessarily confine myself as one thing. You could call me an artist, you could call me a teacher, you could call me a human who is continually learning on this ever expanding journey. And yeah, I'm grateful to be here now.
Mm. Yeah, this journey of life and living, and being really conscious of that, being a conscious explorer, like you just described, of being conscious to your learning. Because I think we're always all learning. We're always picking up lessons and information that's teaching us something. For me, I think it's that consciousness piece, being conscious to that happening,
Yeah.
being, and which opens us up more to all of the lessons and the messages and the healing that's available and everything that we have available to us, that so many people are learning about, are deeply enmeshed in, like you are. But for those that are listening who may not feel that connection, who may not feel like that the messages are for them, or that the learnings are there, or that the that this information is here for us, what would you say to them as a way to open up to that
Yeah.
and begin to listen?
Yeah. I would say that your journey is going to be absolutely unique to you. So the way that you experience messages, the way that you learn things is going to be unique to you. So I would invite anyone who's listening to not necessarily compare your journey to anyone else's journey, but to be able to find within yourself what's truly there and what life is calling forth within you. And whatever you're looking for, you will find. And I've learned that when you're ready for something, when you're ready for a piece of information, it will come to you and it will resonate and it will feel true. the saying, when the student is ready, the teacher will appear, I think is very true, because when your consciousness is ready, when your awareness is ready, something will show up and it will resonate. And even if it's something that you've heard 100 times before, and then you hear it again and somehow it goes deeper now, somehow you understand that thing that maybe you thought was crazy before, or maybe you watched from a distance and you were like, yeah, I don't know about that. That's kind of weird, or that's kind of woo-woo, or that's kind of out there. And then suddenly it hits you. It's like, be open to that discovery within yourself and know that you get to find that for you.
I feel like, a lot of humans wait until a bottom of the barrel crisis moment, like where shit has just gotten so bad that there is no other way out, it seems, than turning within or turning to God. And, why do you think that is, that we often as humans will wait till it hurts so much that, the only thing is to kind of choose this other path?
Yeah. I think there can be multiple reasons. I think sometimes that's just the wake-up call that we need, that's going to set us forth on our mission. And sometimes, like, maybe we even knew before we came into these bodies that we were going to experience something so drastic that was going to shake us awake, because we'd be so deep in a particular construct. I think that can be the case sometimes. And then I also think it doesn't have to be that way. I think it's also a choice, in that the more we become aware and the more we actually connect with what's going on inside of ourselves, instead of, I think our culture is really rooted in escapism. So we're constantly escaping from our inner world. We're escaping into our phones. We're escaping into TV. We're escaping into, the alcohol culture. We're escaping. And when we escape, we're not looking within. But when we look within, I think there is opportunity for those lessons to be a lot more graceful, and where maybe we don't have to hit the bottom of the barrel before we start to learn. Because I think the lessons will repeat themselves until we really get it. And each time it might get harder and harder until we get it. So if we can get it sooner, that's great. And there's no judgment for hitting the bottom of the barrel too.
Right. And I hope that by people tuning into this podcast, connecting to people like you, just gaining wisdom and information, and, continuing to open up within their own spiritual awakening and path, that they will not have to hit that bottom of the barrel to be awoken. Cause it's like, often, right. I've been there. I've hit that place, and it is through the sheer force of it, the, thing that shakes you awake, and you go, this can't be it. This can't be all there is. And ouch, that hurt. And I don't want that in my life. Right. But I believe the same as you, that we don't need to get to that place, that by exposing ourselves to more of this woo-woo wisdom and more of this, these teachings and understandings and practices, even, we can get to that place more gracefully, less painfully. Mm-hmm. So what are some practices or methods even, that you might use yourself or might suggest to clients that help people get there before they're forced there?
Yeah. So I think a huge part is simply rooted in your perspective, in what you're choosing to view and how you're choosing to view your life. So if you're viewing from a place of like, this is a continual unfoldment, and you're viewing from a place where you're literally inviting in the energies of grace, inviting in the energies of ease, going like, I don't know what this looks like, or maybe this path feels challenging, but I'm going to walk with the energy of grace through it all. I'm going to step forward and I'm going to listen. And I think one of the deepest things that I could share, and that I share with people, is cultivating the practice of listening. and listening within yourself and listening to that intuitive place within every single day and every single moment. We're so caught up sometimes in the doing and the going and the like movement that I think the way to really navigate in grace, if that is your intention, is to slow down, to get still, and to listen. And if you ask a question to God, to the universe, to the divine, to whatever you call it, then listen. Listen to the signs that are showing up. Listen to life and what it is guiding you to do, to step into, to open into, because it's all around you. It's consciousness. It's like a feedback mechanism, right? The world around us is a feedback mechanism to our inner world. And when we're listening to the feedback, we're able to interact with it consciously. And so what I would say is practice listening.
Mm. And I find that, you mentioned earlier escapism, and, we're conditioned often within our culture, at least, this American Western culture, to be really reliant on those external things, whether it's an external escape hatch or an external measure of our success, or something out there that either tells us we're okay or we're not okay, or that focus here, like, look at this new shiny object, right? I know you're living back in LA, and I lived there for many years, and there it was so funny in that culture specifically, how there'd be like this new hot club that would open up every 6 months. It would be like, this is the place to go. And then it would be like new shiny object over here, new club. And everyone that would go there would just go, that place would go dead. And this new place would be like the new place, like down the block or on this other street. Same people, different environment. People are so attuned to maybe because we're not tuned in to ourselves, to be so tuned to the outside external world, and then therefore really shaped by it, really influenced by it, and no longer influenced by our own soulful wisdom that we have within. And we're certainly in this, unless you had, I think, a unique upbringing in this country, we're not taught and conditioned to turn within and to listen in the way that you have said. And I believe that is the path, is that tuning in. So a lot of us use meditation to do that, to settle down, to calm, to tune in and turn in. Are there any other things that you recommend or that you do on a daily basis to invoke that listening?
Yeah. Well, first I want to touch on something that you said that I think is a gold nugget, in that I think the awareness point of the culture being that of seeking external validation and constantly chasing those dopamine highs to find that worthiness within, which is a lot of the culture that you see here in LA and around. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that. It's all free will. But recognizing in a practice, in meditation, and all of these things, I think there's different kinds of meditation that you can do. You can do active meditation, where maybe you take a concept that you want to work with. So maybe you want to inquire to yourself, how can I listen more? And you take that concept, and then you set a timer for 15 minutes, set a timer for 20 minutes, and meditate on that particular concept, right? Sit with it, be in the feedback, in the communication with that concept, interact with it, talk to it, hear it like it is an alive human. So I think the way that you meditate, there's many different styles, but this form of active meditation where you're engaging with specific inquiries to the universe, to yourself, then you can become in conscious co-creation and become a conscious co-creator with the universe. And you can talk to it and be like, hey, I noticed I'm not sure what the messages are. Like, how can I do that better? Can you show me? And then you can sit in that stillness and hear what comes in, which what comes in may come in the form of a feeling, right? It may come in a thought. It may come in a poem. It may come in a piece of art. It may come in something you hear the person at the coffee shop say to you that just hits, that just you feel truth in it, right? And so when you sit with that and you open up that inquiry in active meditation, and even if you don't get all the answers in that meditation, you'll get some, but then you start to take that into a living meditation in your life where you're listening for that response in an open way that's allowing and not like searching, but allowing and hearing. Then you'll start to develop this inner wisdom because you'll start to have these revelations within yourself.
I love that you brought up that we're, you don't have to be an expert in this, right? You don't have to have all of these, perfectly laid out practices and have, studied under spiritual masters for decades and have this kind of expert spiritual life. That you can simply ask yourself, how do I do this shit? How do I do in? Right? And you'll be fed those answers of the how and even, you might even ask yourself, why should I even bother? Why should I do this? Right. So I love that you mentioned that it's the, I think, again, our culture being so externally focused and externally validating, it's like you need some institution out here to say, okay, you're ready.
Yeah.
You're ready for this. Totally. And you've done all the steps and you got all the certificates and right. Instead of just asking yourself, am I ready?
Yeah.
What's a sign that I'm ready?
Yeah.
A sign that I'm listening or that I'm tuned in.
Yeah, I agree, because cultivating that inner connection is one of the most powerful things that you can do. And I think, while I think every teacher comes in for a reason, and listen to that when those reflections are showing up, I think there's also an imbalance when someone takes on another person's philosophy fully as the way. It's very easy to give your power away to an external institution where you have an intermediary to your own connection, where that might be helpful for a time because that might be like the crutch that you need for a moment in your life. And that might lift you up to exactly where you need to be. And there's nothing wrong with that. Let me be clear. However, there may come a time where you're ready to walk on your own. And when you're ready to walk on your own, you can find that within yourself. And that doesn't mean you don't have to engage with that institution or that teacher or that anything, because everything is a reflection of what's inside of us. It's just you can engage with it from a sovereign place where you're like discerning for yourself the wisdom that's coming through. You're discerning and finding it for yourself what you are hearing versus just blindly taking it on and then later questioning it because you didn't actually discover it within. You just heard it and took it on as truth.
Mm-hmm. Right. So kind of letting go of any dogmatic understanding and getting to a true understanding through experiencing that connection. So as you said earlier, of once you start to listen and tune in and then hear the messages that are coming from the various teachers and messengers that we encounter, then I believe trust gets built up, right? Yeah. You start to trust that wisdom. Therefore, you start to trust that connection with that inner knowing, with our soul self. Yeah. And that just becomes really fun. You're like, oh, okay. Now I can listen and tune in more. Now I can trust this voice. I can trust the messages that are coming in. You get better and better at that discernment. Yeah. And So it's a practice in that way, isn't it? Of where it doesn't all just fall into your understanding all at once.
It's such a practice. And in that process, it's possible that you're going to bump into a little friend named fear. It's possible that it's going to feel really scary sometimes. It's possible that someone will come into your life reflecting something, and they'll come in a package that, you know, is different than how your human constructs want to receive it, but they have something for you. And so you might get scared, but a deeper part of you beyond the fear knows it's right. And that's when you get to transform, because you're moving into something you know is right, even if the constructs and the programming that have been put into your head since birth, since before birth, in your ancestry are being confronted. I think that's an important part of the process to recognize, is that as you're transforming, as you're learning to listen, those constructs will be confronted. And so to recognize when you're feeling fear from a construct, and then when your gut is just saying, no, that's wrong. And then to be able to discern the difference, which comes through practice, which comes through time. But I don't want to give the illusion that when you're listening, it's always going to look like rose-colored flowers and da 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 da, and it can. But in that process, it might look like you're, skipping with dandelions, and then all of a sudden you hit up against a big rock, and you have to face that rock. You have to be with it. You have to, like the water hits rocks, you have to transform it into sand so you can keep walking. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a beautiful part of the process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that metaphor of the water transforming that hardness into sand. What we discover in the shadows as we do this work and as we walk this path of reconnecting and aligning to our souls is I think it's what kept me probably away from the work, the practice, because of that fear. Knowing that I will have to face these demons. I will have to do what is not always fun and rosy and dandelions, as you mentioned, right? And flying away on unicorns. I mean, I feel like when your practice is that, you're probably spiritually bypassing in a lot of ways. If that's all your practice is flying away into the ethers, because so much of this is very grounded in reality. And I loved how you described yourself. You are, a student of, or an explorer of reality, like this being everything from the light and the dark and everything in between.
Yeah. And it's such a gift to be able to get to those deeper places where maybe everything is creation unfolding. So just because something is hard or heavy does not mean there's there's no judgment on that being bad or good or right or wrong. And I think the more we can be with those pieces, the more we can alchemize our inner worlds and thereby transform our external worlds. Because if you look at the world we're living in, we're not at a place where everything is daisies and butterflies. And so that means there's probably things within all of us that are going to feel really heavy, that want to be loved, that want to be faced, that want to be held, that want to be alchemized. And that process of alchemy is a big part of the work that we're doing here. And that's how we're developing our mastery. That's how we're developing our gifts. If you think of Earth as a school we all signed up for, we signed up for this. We knew on some level we were going to face these things that were hard, experience beautiful bliss, and experience really hard pain, but all of it allowing us to transform and to grow within ourselves and transform our world around us. So there is nothing wrong with that process.
Mm-hmm. And I love that you brought up alchemy. I've been sitting with that a lot lately, that really this process of facing, the demons and the blocks and the hard stuff, the things that you may not want anymore in your human experience, that it isn't about letting it go necessarily.
Yeah.
It's about transforming it, alchemizing it. There's so much power in anger, let's say, or so much power in all of the energy that you may have held around something that you no longer want. It's just like, don't let go of that energy. Like, transform it, alchemize it into a way that you can use it really usefully, and in a way that's new, in a way that is going to help bring in more of what you want. And so that's been something I've been picturing and meditating on recently, of not just letting go, which I think ends up feeling why so many people have a hard time letting go. It's just like, well, you're letting go of so much power. You're letting go of things that could be really useful for you. So it's kind of smart not to let go, but to now take it and do something to alchemize. So tell me more about, because I know you help clients do this in order to reach new heights or to deepen their creativity. What advice would you give to someone who is ready to alchemize maybe a hardship or a bad habit or something that they would maybe traditionally want to just like let go of it? Oh, I don't want that in my life anymore, but to transform it in a way.
Yeah. I think the first step would be awareness. So knowing that you are alchemizing the object, the energy that you are alchemizing, knowing that is the first step to the alchemy actually being able to happen, because then you can become the observer to the material that is alchemizing within yourself. So I think when you have that awareness of this is a process, this is an alchemical process, that's already going to start the alchemy process. And then I think so often we're in these constructs of like the victim and the villain, and kind of starting to reframe these, what you might call negative energies, as like, they're not necessarily villainous. They're just energies that are ready to evolve, that are ready to transform. So if you're not seeing them as bad per se, and if they're not these big villains in the closet that you have to run and hide from, or like lock the closet with a deadbolt and never look at it again and like be like, yeah, we don't need to go there. But if you could just, slowly open up the door to the closet and go, hey, little friends in there, like, what, are you okay? Like, why are you scared? Like talk to them. It's consciousness. And what I find working with these deep fears and these deep energies is like, they're learning too. They're on a journey too. And when you can have an engagement with them, a feedback with them, a relationship with them, you can help those energies to transform or to evolve, or, to go release from your body maybe and go elsewhere. But then in that space, it's like the transformation has happened. So really, whether you call it you're just transforming the energy or you're letting go and bringing something new in, it's kind of the same thing. But recognizing that energy was never bad or wrong. And it's okay. There is not a human that's a human on this earth that doesn't have what one would call like demons in the closet, or energies that need to be transformed. It's like, by being a human being on this earth, we all have energies here to transform, and we are all connected. So if one of us has energies that need to be transformed, we all do on some level. So it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, I love the message of just not judging it as wrong or bad or negative, but judging, taking away judgment and just seeing it as it's for you. Well, it's for you for a reason, and learning from it and inquiring and getting curious about why it's here for you. And doing that in a way that maybe, you mentioned, sort of outside of the thing itself. So how would you recommend someone were to discharge the energy around something? Because I think it can be so hard to look at something that is scary or hard or that traumatic in someone's life.
Yeah.
Because there's so much of this, what we call a negative charge, or just, so much of that judgment that is negative around that thing of that then maybe has kept them in that victim place, because they've had, this villain out here, this villainous experience, or this villainous person. So aside from awareness, or I guess beyond awareness, and taking that step first to start to alchemize, and then stripping away judgment of that thing, like what would be the next step after we do those things to look at it and start to, we have these conversations. What do we want to ask of those things? And I mean, maybe that's just different for every single person.
Yeah. Well, I think depending on the thing that you're transforming, the questions you ask may be slightly different. But I think before that, there's a recognition of, one, the process is going to be bit by bit. I think something that's important to address in our culture, especially the culture of doing a lot of plant medicines, is there's a big energy that's trying to do it all at once, trying to fix it all at once. Like, take the magic pill and be free from pain, right? But to recognize, like, it's okay to feel pain, first of all, and it's okay to have the process go bit by bit. And your process and the time of your process is going to be unique to you. So by doing that, you're allowing the alchemy to happen versus forcing, which when you force, it's just going to backfire on you. And then you're going to have to deal with other negative effects that will come from that, right? Like people who maybe have a big journey and they release so much trauma at once, but then they have a lot of health issues because it was too fast for their body, right? So recognizing bit by bit, and then also building up that like nervous system capacity to be able to process some of these heavier energies. And for everyone, that's different. Some people already have the capacity and like it's easier to go right into it. But for others, if it's not, that's okay too. And recognizing that you can build that capacity of your nervous system, of your health, to be able to hold these bigger energies. And so, yeah, I think that's really important. And then when you recognize that and you're building your capacity to be with these energies, whether you're doing that on your own or you're in a container with someone who's helping you hold the energy as you're learning how to alchemize these things, then to hold them, and like you said, bringing it back to like, what do you ask? Sometimes you can ask a question and sometimes the energy just wants you to be with it. And then as you be with it, the energy may guide you to do something, to move a certain way, to, the amount of times I've been in my living room on my hands and my knees, like screaming like an animal or like roofing or like whatever needs to come out. And like the more you don't have judgment to it, but you can just allow, the energy will inform you in how it wants to move. Maybe it wants you to dance. Maybe it wants you to sound. Maybe it just wants you to be present so that you can feel tears or you can let out an emotion. And like, it's a process that you can't necessarily go, these are the 3 steps. It's because it's organic. And the more you're present to that organic unfoldment, the easier it will be to transform. And when you build up that capacity within yourself, you'll be able to do that just on your own, in your own space. And it's okay if you need some hand holding to get there, because we all do at times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we live in right now in this culture of, biohacking, spiritual hacking, right? There's so many hacks that are happening right now that are being presented to people as the way and as the answer. So what do you think about, I kind of you already answered what you think about that, because it's not just a magic pill, right? It's a process, and everyone's process is different.
Yeah. And I think every biohack or whatever, it all has its purpose. And I think, it's just like diet. I don't think there's one diet that's right for everyone. And I think there's different diets that are going to be right for people at different times in their life that serve different purposes. And I think with all of those things, like, you have to trust your intuition of like, yeah, this particular biohacking methodology is really speaking to me right now. Well, then it's probably for a reason. It's not bad. I wouldn't write any of it off. I love a lot of biohacking things myself, but I think knowing that like that's a piece versus like this one modality is going to solve all of my problems forever, then you don't give your power away to that modality, and then you can actually receive more benefits from whatever that is. And maybe that modality is going to solve all your problems forever, and the placebo effect of your brain is going to create that. So who am I to limit you? Like, there is infinite possibility in that. And so what works for you works for you.
Mm-hmm.
And trust that.
And it's like based on your own belief systems, what you're open and ready for, the messages, right? The same message could come from two different teachers, two different methodologies, and one of them is going to resonate with one person and another's going to resonate with another person. I think that's beautiful about life, that there is something here for all of us. And there's a way for us to gain that wisdom, connecting to our soul and to source, through countless. I mean, I think it's infinite ways. Yeah. There is not just the one way. And being open to all of those different ways and to whatever's resonating with you at the moment is the path, right? It's listening and tuning in and being in resonance, not just always acting. I think that's the other, maybe what we're taught, like of the doing and the action and I'm going to do this hack and I'm going to do this course and I'm going to do this X, Y, or Z in order to reach this place of connection. But what I hear you saying and also feel within is just the allowing of it all to happen, rather than always being so actively doing something. So it's that being versus doing, right? And getting into that place of being open, being aware, being receptive.
Yeah, I love that. And I love the being while you're doing. So if you're going to do, particular biohack, instead of doing it to check off the list, be really present to the process, really present and engaging with it so deeply, because then you're going to allow it to, one, serve you better, and then you're also going to know what is serving for you, because you're going to be present to it. So if something is not serving for you, you're going to be aware of that, and you're also going to allow the things that are serving to affect you a lot more deeply. Mm-hmm. So be while you do, I'd say.
Right. And that's I think what so many people try to get to is being in the now, being present at all times. And when you're trying to achieve something, accomplish something, it can really take you out of that present moment and out of the now, because you're thinking about the achievement. You're going, okay, when I'm done this, I'm going to have accomplished that.
Yeah.
Right. And instead of just being and allowing it to unfold. So combining those practices can, not that you're not going to get anything out of just doing something, but when you combine the being present and being in the moment in that doing, I hear you saying that it just enriches it and it allows it to really settle in and make transformations or changes in a more powerful way.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I find it's not about so many different practices and so many different things. If you just have one that you're fully present to, like that might be enough. For some people, you'll need a lot of different colors on the palette, and that's just how you're wired. And for others, maybe it's that one thing that you're really deeply present to that's working for you and you're engaging with it versus like, gosh, I remember years ago when I lived in Mexico, I'd be in yoga class and I'd be planning my next yoga class and I'd be planning my next meditation and I'd be like planning all the next healthy things I needed to do while I was in yoga. And I was like, something about this doesn't feel beneficial. So I get it. Like I come from like the hardcore doing planning, go, go, go mentality that I had to really massage within myself and continue to face deeper layers of that through evolution of like, oh no, if I'm going to do the yoga class, I'm just going to be present to that in that moment, right? If I'm going to meditate, I'm going to be present to that. I'm not going to be thinking about the 10 other things I'm going to do after, right? And that's where I feel it like it hits so much more deeply.
Yeah, it is all practice too to settle into the now and settle into this exact moment here without thinking about the past or the future. Really, we can be so mired in both. That and neither are really well, I mean, let's talk about being in different times and places, because I was about to say, it's not really beneficial being, spread out in the past, the present, or the future, and not just settling into the now. But what about, being in multiple times at once, and and how does that work into our human experience? How does that enrich, or can it enrich our reality as humans?
Yeah, it can absolutely enrich our reality as humans. And I think the more that we're dropped into the present, the more that we are meant to receive, well, let's call it information or energies from either the past or the future to inform us of something, the more we'll be receptive to those particular energies because we're here now. We're not trying to jump ahead or jump back. It's like we're here and then we're allowing that information to come into us as it is relevant without leaving the now, if that makes sense. And sometimes that will look like going on a deeper journey or a vision into those, like, let's say, future spaces and working with that creation energy and then bringing back different pieces into the now, which can be really, really powerful. Like we can go grab gifts of ourselves from different times or different lives or different, like there is so much that can be explored with time and with the energy of creation, but to do that consciously from a place of like, this is present and this is alive. It is present to be exploring time right now. Okay, cool. Go have at it, man. It is present to go on this journey. All right. Yeah. Now is the time to go on the journey because it is present versus living in the past or living in the future all the time. Right.
Yeah. So the not limiting ourselves, like you said earlier, right? Like, who are you to limit? We tend to, I think, in our human bodies and construct in this experience, which I think is interesting. It's like we chose to have these limitations of all of this. It's like, okay, well, we chose to have limitations that we feel as humans, and yet we can live outside of those limitations. And, and then maybe the journey here is learning how to live outside of those limitations or live with the limitations that we've come here with.
Yeah, I love that. And I find the more you accept the limitations and allow creativity through the limitations, the more you'll be able to go beyond the limitations. For example, like when I paint on canvas, I'm limited by the size of the canvas, and that allows more creativity to come through, which is really powerful. Or, I've worked in film before, and there's a budget, right? And so maybe you have to creatively find a way to make something happen within that particular budget. And it might feel like a limitation. It might be like, oh, I wish I just had all the money in the world to do this thing. But maybe you don't, because maybe that really cool idea or that cool moment in the film or that location that you find because you are limited, that leads to like the most magical scene in the movie, gets to open up because of those limitations. So recognizing like any limitation that I have is happening for me. Right? There's something to discover through this limitation. And that's where I feel like you get like the massive creative downloads.
Yeah. Yes. It's so true. I was just thinking about when you were talking about filmmaking and the movie Jaws that scared, the crap out of anybody that grew up in that era when that movie came out, how and like viscerally scared to go into the waters, not even the ocean only, but like a pool or somewhere where it doesn't even make sense, where there would be a shark, like a swimming in a pond, a pool, just feeling this fear. And they created that visceral fear within that movie because of their budget constraints, because they were working on the mechanical jaws, and it just was taking so long and it kept breaking down. And so they couldn't film it, but they had to continue filming because of course the budget constraints. And so they created this fear through you being like behind the shark or not knowing and not seeing the shark, and then adding and layering in that music that made you like, oh my God, what is this thing? What is this scary thing that we don't see? And then you eventually see it and you're like, oh my God. But I loved reading or hearing about that story of those constraints and what they led to, this cinematic, thing, such power that it created such fear in people. Now, I'm not all about instilling fear in people, right? But it was a powerful process of what happened, a powerful alchemy that happened because of that.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that example. And I love it's almost like when you accept the limitations that are present and you move with them creatively, then you fall into that space of synchronicity, which is really working with the divine, where things can just show up for you because it's like, maybe your house is really loud and there's loud construction and you're like, I can't get any work done today. And so then that leads you to go on a walk, and then you end up at a coffee shop and you have like this, you meet someone, and that limitation, by accepting it and then doing like moving with it, led to something.
So instead of fighting those things that feel like limitations, we flow with them and open because of them. I love that. You've been talking about, or you mentioned that you've been painting, and I've seen your beautiful, not just beautiful, but expressive and deeply transformative paintings. For you, what is that process like you mentioned, you have a limited space on this canvas. Tell us a little bit more about that creative process, because I know this is a deep practice for you in expressing your soul or connecting to your soul.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really beautiful process for me. And I think it is one of, again, I'll say it again because it bears repeating so many times. It is a practice of listening, my creation process, because it's like the way that I create art, and we'll just go specifically in on this, is like I start to feel the energies of the art dropping in, almost like they're informing me. That's almost like these little cells that begin moving, they begin percolating, and they begin like dancing almost. And then as they start dancing, they might come down and they might come into my head, and all of a sudden I'm like starting to feel the energy in my head, and like maybe it's just pure energy, or maybe thoughts are forming around like colors that I need to go get, or colors that I need to use, or a size of a canvas. And then like that starts informing something. And then in that process, like those cells are dancing more and they start to move like through my body. So then it becomes this creative process through my body where I start to just know what to do and when to do it. And actually for me in painting, which is slightly different than writing, there's not often thought forms. It's more just feeling and knowing and trusting that like intuitive pulse. Like it's, for me, painting is very primal in a sense. Like it's like connecting with the color, connecting with the energies, working with the energies and the consciousnesses that I can feel are wanting to like distribute an energy or distribute a message onto the canvas. And that message is not linear because that's not how they communicate in this way. And so it's allowing that non-linear space to come in and doing it when I feel the pulse coming through, where I feel sometimes creatives go, I'm creatively blocked. And I'm like, no, you're not blocked. You're just not listening to the pulse. You're not listening to your inner pulse. And you're maybe trying to force something out when maybe you need to allow it to flow. And easier said than done. It's a process to learn how to do that. But when you do, it's like you become in tune with the rhythm of the creation. And I don't think there's such thing as being creatively blocked. There's such thing as maybe not honoring the creation or not honoring yourself. But that flow is infinite when you can tap into it in that way.
And when it's not appearing, when it's not showing up for you at that moment, the page is blank and you're staring at it, or the canvas is blank and you're just looking at it, or, you know, maybe you're writing a song and nothing is coming to you, then it's not that you have a block per se, is what you're saying. It's that it's just that it's just not there at the moment, that it hasn't dropped in. Or are there ways to open up to allow it to drop in for you at that moment?
Yeah, I love that. I'd say, well, with all things, there's no absolutes and no hard conclusions. So in each moment, you need to discern for yourself what is true. Like that above all conclusive statements. And then in that moment where the page is blank and you're like, I need to write. I'm not writing. And maybe the page is blank, but like there is something there. So work with the energy that is there, which might be you cursing on the page, going like, the amount of poems I have written that have started me like just cursing, like, and then like something beautiful comes through is a lot, because I just need to like move the energy, right? And so like maybe what's there is frustration. And actually, sometimes I find before a big creative thing comes through, sometimes it's like, like it's this frustration energy that's like trying to birth something. And so like, don't run away from it. Like, don't go, oh, I'm just not feeling it. No, move through it and with it. And as you move through it, you might find like, okay, yeah, this energy wants me to go outside and connect with the tree or go on a walk, and it's taking me away from the laptop, or it might take you deeper into the laptop. We're using writing as an example here. And so in that, it's like move with the energy, move with the clay, and that will allow it to open in the way that it is wanting to, which I think is a much more visceral process than a mental process. And so when you can connect with it in that way, you'll move with the aliveness because it's alive. And, you know, I used to do these, like, I worked with a musician for a while. We made these recorded meditations, and every single time before the meditations would come through, sometimes it was like, oh, okay, just have to lay down. And then the energy would come in, and then it was like, all of a sudden it would be in, and I would just like shoot up and be like, okay, time to record. Like, it's here now, but for an hour, I needed to just lay down and close my eyes. And then all of a sudden I felt it. and then I could move with it. Versus if I had just tried to sit down and record, it wasn't there yet. And when you become in tune with that through time, through awareness, through engagement with it, you'll start to just know.
And that I love what you just said, like, and that visual of you just like popping up, like, okay, is to me so telling that whatever's coming through, whatever becomes a painting, whatever becomes a book, whatever becomes a song, whatever becomes your life even, has its own energy. It is a spirit of itself. It's the spirit of that tune, or that, it could be something, in business. It's like you need to write a plan of some sort, and you feel blocked and stuck there of like, oh, I don't know what this plan's going to be. And then it comes through. So it's how all of it exists on its own. It is its own entity, it has its own energetic makeup, and it is a spirit that you're allowing to come into you, right? And you're allowing to work with you, and that you are like deciding together, or we're going to do this, like, let's do this together, right? And you get to be in partnership with that energy. And it's so beautiful when you can experience all of life that way, of this dance together, this partnership with those energies, rather than thinking like, oh, I'm just here on my own and I have to create all these things, this magical life and this beautiful painting and this, this story that, my publisher needs. It's like when you feel like it's all just coming from you, there's so much freaking pressure, right? It's not necessarily, it's going to feel like a block because you're just thinking like, oh, I have to create this myself, rather than open up and allowing it to come in.
Totally. Creating from those deeper places of you that exist beyond constructs and beyond form and beyond limitation, that are just like, here you go. Like, let's go, let's move. Those energies of creation don't have human limiters.
Mm-hmm.
And so allow them to work with you, the ones that are true, that are an expression of your soul and those deeper places within you. They're like, you can dance with them. It's all a dance.
Mm-hmm. So how can people work with you if they wanted to and reach you?
Yeah, so they can reach out to me. My website's lizzieloch.com, and they can either schedule a session with me or a consultation if they're looking to do deeper work. I work one-on-one with people, and then stay tuned. We'll be launching the Create course, and so when that launches, I will be giving Corissa a little code, so sign up via here, and that will be a 4-month journey, really diving deep into a lot of these things that we talked about, of like, okay, yeah, I need to flow with my intuition, but where do you even start, right? And so if you're someone who's like wanting to open up that place deep within yourself and like find how to create in these ways, like I know it can sound nice in theory, but when it comes down to it, what are the practices? What are the learnings? What are the journeys you need to go on to really find that within yourself? So stay tuned for the Create course. You can follow me on Instagram at Lizzie Loch, and yeah, feel free to reach out. Like, I'm here. You send me a direct message. Like, if there's something within you that feels inspired to connect with me and resonates, like, I'm a human, I'm here, and I would love to connect with you.
Thank you so much for connecting with us today and sharing everything that you did. I'm so happy. Like I said at the beginning, before we started, I just love connecting with you every single time that we do, and feel like our friendship and our connection is such a gift in my life.
Yeah.
So thank you, sister.
Thank you
for having
me
next time.
Yeah, thank you for
pleasure.
having me.